I want you to imagine being a decade late and being a thoroughly conditioned World of Warcraft player, someone used to the more simple core rotations, the core few buttons of specs, and of course a wildly different encounter design ethos, and also being literally new to everything in the game, and also a bit stupid. Well, that's me, and that's today's challenge. Less to become good at FF14 raid content, and more to become decent, to make up for lost time, and hopefully to help everyone else who's on this journey with me. And also, look at this! It's the January pin that's over on our Patreon, so check it and the art out down below. It's the best way to support us, and you will get some mighty cool things in return. Okay, let's get going. I want to die less, and I want to do more damage. Dying less, well, that's very easy to track in-game. Doing that while doing decent damage, that is a bit harder. FF14 does have a bit of a solution, Stone, Sky, Sea. You can unlock it in Idleshire, and then you can unlock the Endwalker one, and basically it's a little Judy where if you can defeat the target dummy in the allotted time, then you're kind of good to go. But there is a downside, it's not the most real-world scenario, so enter Advanced Combat Tracker and a very major disclaimer. Right, from all of my research, ACT is massively used in the community, and it is used by other content creators. It's also against the terms of service, and therefore it is a bannable thing. But Square Enix only seem to ban people who use this information for ill, such as berating other players for damage, saying, "Hey, you parsed badly, you big noob," doing something like that in-game, you are going to get banned. And you should, because, well, it's against the rules. Now, here's the kind of unofficial guidance on this. Never talk about ACT, parses, or any of this business in the in-game chats. Never talk about it in your group. Never call out another player's DPS. Only use it for the express purpose of measuring your own performance, benchmarking yourself to become a better player. From all the research I've done, if you do that, you will be fine. There's loads of setup guides out there and things like that. Okay, I did this because I like having a number. I like being able to quantify if I'm doing a good job or a shit job. And of course, because I'm starting, it's going to be the latter a lot more than the former. So let's talk about my first foray. Pandemonium was, of course, my first port of call. The extremes might drop the same item level, but look, they are harder. P1 then, well, a lovely little fight. Great place to start, and it's one that proved that my look at the boss model for the info you need, not just the cast bar, weakness is strong. And, of course, that it was definitely time to not have displacement bound right beside engagement on my hotbar. My first 2 kills were bad. Both of them had 2 deaths each, and all from different things. What I will say, though, is each time I felt better, until I then fell off the path once more and died. This very much proved that all of that stuff, plus learning a new job in a game that I'm not used to, that was rough. And also very fun. Seriously, this lit a fire on me. It feels good to learn a new game. This, after all, is my very first time at FF14 Endgame. Meaning that it's also time when I learnt one of its deepest strengths. Queuing for raids on a fight-by-fight basis? To somebody who played the other big MMO for a long time, that's madness! In FF14, that's the norm, and I really feel it now. As a new raider, on a new job, legit, like, I've not played Red Mage for that long whatsoever, I had been Ninja, it's an utter godsend. Imagine, if you're a WoW player, imagine wanting to practice Painsmith, right? Well, that's either going to involve wiping during progression with your guild, or the hellscape of World of Warcraft pugging. Here, I just select the fight I want to practice, and I queue for it, and I go again and again and again and again. looking at my logs, learning key tips and tricks such as don't bind engagement and displacement one key apart from each other because you're just going to backflip into the death zone and embarrass yourself. But hey, I suppose that is a bit of a red mage rite of passage for every single boss you ever do. The ease of access for this raid system is just killer. In the game I'm more used to, if I scrounged by through a kill and I wasn't happy with my performance, I would have to wait like a week until I could do that fight again. Or maybe find a pug, which would involve committing up to a few hours of time just to get to the fight that I want to practice, only to maybe do that once or twice. And sure, you could use LFR in WoW, but that's hardly the same and it still would take ages. Now, these are two systems with their own pros and cons. World of Warcraft is less accessible, it is more traditional, and while accessibility often does conjure up negative connotations in gaming, I think FF14 shows that it really can work. No wonder that FF14 is therefore known for having a pretty damn clued-in player base, because between the likes of this, and of course having to do trials and dungeons during MSQ, how can you not hit level 90 and kinda get it? The format of FF14 is, quite simply, far better set up to train new players. Of course, the cost that you pay for that is not having humongous, contiguous raids, a big dungeon to delve into with a full raid group. But I'm happy enough with the trade-off. And speaking of content, well, let's return. Practice makes perfect, and I had a lot to do. I could not rest until I was reliably better at P1. Attempt 1 then, 4.35k DPS. Attempt 2, 4.23k. Attempt 3, 4.1k. Oh dear, that's a downward trend. Attempt 4, no deaths, 5.9k. Yeah. What was the major difference between these? Well, in the one with the okay damage, I didn't die twice. I died 0 times. Of course, each time you are resurrected, you are debuffed. But if you die again within a minute, then the debuff that you'll get is even stronger. Then, and definitely good for my self-respect, the 50th percentile within the last 2 weeks for P1 for Red Mage is 6.1k DPS, meaning that my 5.9k was almost average. Except that I am in 580 crafted gear. Okay, I go to bed. Day 2. I'm no longer in 4-hour sleep, and I'm back to Pandemonium, but with a UI tweak. My eyes kept wandering down, and that certainly made looking at the boss harder, so I slapped a few of the things that I want to track onto their own bar. Yeah, WoW players just can't live without Recoras. Roast me. Okay, P3. Blind. After a hard enough fought victory with Matt in P2, I go to P3, and of course I go there blind. Attempt 1. Ouch. Attempt 2. Ouch. These were grueling, and they were revealing. So many people died so often, and absolutely myself included, that each one of these pulls was just hyper long. And that's the thing, the hyper long fight times caused by group-wide deaths isn't just a way for the game to provide a hard-fought victory that's fraught with tension. No, it also says, hey, you failed the mechanic, and the fight will take longer. Use that to learn. And armed with that experience, and Matt letting me know that I could actually turn friendly spell effects down to simple to help the fights be a bit more clear and readable, I go into attempt 3, and 5,800 DPS, which was, to my tremendous surprise, in the upper quartile of DPS when I checked FF logs. I failed mechanics a few times, I got vulnerability stacks that I really should not have got, but the learning journey had me feeling confident, had me feeling pleased, happy, like the trajectory of my improvement was just far faster than it would be in most games. Cue P4, and, well, as a theme, I clear it first time, but I do so with 2 deaths. Yeah, just like P1 and I believe P2 as well, I died twice. Those are deaths that kept my DPS nice and low. I've got to say, P4 is really cool, by the way. I have not seen a mechanic like its role-dependent soaks before, and I mean, hey, it's a big vampire dude. Just like with Denathrius, that's cool. And you know what, everyone? It left me with thoughts. So let's have a chat. Well, that was quite a journey, wasn't it? Is P1 through 4 easier than LFR? Is it easier than normal, harder than normal? What's it like versus heroic raids in WoW? The answer is it's completely different. FF14 has a difficulty system that is wholly unique. It is unlike World of Warcraft. Really. WoW will hard wipe you for less because its combat is more of a pretty punishing puzzle, I would say. In FF14, well, it throws you more big visual ideas, certainly. But if you don't pay attention, you are royally screwed. And unlike World of Warcraft, FF14's classes, I would say, have more core buttons to the rotation. So just sitting there, trying not to totally cock up your red mage opener, and then trying to, of course, correctly weave in all your OGCDs, maybe trying to fit those OGDCs within, an optimal emboldened window, while then trying to pay attention to the boss and all of its cues. I mean, it is quite something. I think it's, when it's in its learning phase, higher cognitive load at this level, leading to lots of frequent deaths. It's like it almost feels like FF14 is harder than normal, but has a higher success rate than a normal raid or something like that. It's something that can actually only be explained by the likes of the res system in this game, which I've fallen in love with. Look, you can combat res all you want. No timers, no limits. The catch, though, it leaves you with a 25% main stat debuff for 60 seconds. And if you die again during that 60-second timer, well, the debuff will be back, but it will be 50%, and so on. And this basically means that where World of Warcraft would just hard wipe you, in FF14, the unneeded deaths merely extend the fight. Now, over on Savage, the tuning is too tight to get away with loads of bullshit, of course, but I think for a mode like, I suppose, normal Pandemonium, which obviously P1 through 4, like, that's going to be the easiest content in Endwalker, obviously, right? So I'm not sitting here saying that I've just went in and done a big proper hard raid. No, not at all. But where normally I'd wipe and have to run back and then get ready for the fight again, in FF, well, that kill you won't be punished by a full wipe. You'll keep on fighting. And sure, it will mean that the boss will take a bit longer to kill, but A, that does kind of beat the boring run time of a wipe and then a new attempt. So A, that, and then B, it actually gives you the opportunity for this incredible comeback story where you can really claw back victory. And C, it allows you to almost immediately learn from your mistake, whatever mistake killed you. Often, I actually find that what happens is you really have to view the boss animations before the UI tells you exactly what's going on. The UI, of course, will help you know 100% sure the exact position and what the mechanic is that killed you. It's very, very clear with that. But if you miss the animations and you try to only react to the UI, then you will get hit by the mechanic. It's like the cone AI or whatever for an ability. It only appears just to say, hey, this is exactly what the ability is, by the way, and yeah, you really should have been looking at the boss model. And that just means that you always know pretty much exactly how you died. So you then get rezzed, and you immediately apply that knowledge. I think this is an incredible learning ground, and I've got to emphasize here, this is match-made content. Now, could you imagine P3 LFR in WoW? Right? Could you imagine match-made normal or heroic raids in WoW? I certainly think it would turn out pretty different with how their combat design is, being less about the big dance fights and more about the sort of, this is a strategic, mechanical puzzle for you to pass or fail, and by the way, one or two players could pretty easily wipe the entire group. There are times that could happen in FF, of course, but it does seem to be less how they design their fights. My first run, actually, of P3 was in a group that was, me included, a tad scuffed. We had some really rough pulls, but the thing is, where in WoW, I mean, we would have wiped so much. In FF, it was actually just 3 really long fights, and that actually meant that we really learned. And I'm sure that everyone was a better player by the end, because I damn well know that I was. It gave me this 45 minutes of just, oh my god, hyper-focus. And then, of course, vulnerability stacks, another really neat way they design things. Often, right, instead of a mechanic outright killing you in a fight, it will give you a vulnerability stack. And that will mean that, yeah, any future failures within that vulnerability stack's debuff window, they will be more likely to kill you. So instead of, bam, you're dead, it's more, oh, you've been put in notice. It's less punishing, but that does allow them to kind of ratchet up the mechanics, I think anyway. And all of this means that they can make incredibly satisfying fights that even can work in a match-made system that still manages to, of course, teach people really how to be better players. It doesn't waste their time. It doesn't cause much unneeded frustration. It doesn't have you doing a bunch of corpse runs and trash clears and stuff like that. It's just a syringe of MMO Final Fantasy boss just jammed in you. Then this and a few other things, I think really does mean that the average FF14 player is better at this content than I would say sometimes the average player of, well, maybe WoW or maybe other MMOs. And there's quite a lot to unpack with that. I mean, there's what I've already said about how I think the overall combat design is more geared towards teaching people to be better players, but there's another thing, and that is the dungeons and trials are part of the story progression. Every person who went from level 80 to level 90 cleared those 3 trials. And that means that they will have benefited from all of the design boons that I just mentioned. I think this team has really found their footing. And look, to me, a classic big World of Warcraft raid, 10 bosses, a incredible environment to progress through with everybody. I am not advocating that that should change. And certainly not having those big experiences in FF. Like, yeah, you do miss a little bit of that. But I'm sure that some of these lessons could be learned by World of Warcraft. And hey, I'd say, while we're at it, let's scrap world bosses and let's move the design time spent in world bosses over to copying FF14 trials and giving us some sort of just, hey, match-make a cool boss fight or something. What's next in my horizon then? It's extremes. And look, I'm not going to dive fully into this. Basically, from our understanding, I mean, look, the extremes are harder, and I really should have done T1 extreme first. I didn't. I just went straight into T2 extreme. And then I kind of realized, oh yeah, that's probably the harder one. It is. What I'm going to say about T2 extreme, I'll do it super quickly. Number 1, oh my god, what a blast. I love the mechanics of that fight. Phase 1 is just incredible. I love the crystallized mechanic. I just love how, like, the way I'm playing is I'm listening to see, is that the bubbly water sound effect, which means that I have to, soak in one of the groups? Is that the, the more sharp ice sound effect, meaning I've got to spread? And then, of course, learning the attack patterns. And then Phase 3. And, Matt explained Phase 3 to me after I'd done it in the most incredible way, where he's like, Phase 3 seems like such a bonkers, crazy, impossible thing until you actually do it a few times. It clicks, and then you're like, oh, I completely get it. Wow. It's just, wow. It is such a cool fight. It's such a cool fight. Oh my, I cannot wait for T3 Extreme. And do you know what? I did T2 Extreme. A, blind. B, in a practice group. I mean, just the way I could open up the party finder, go to a practice group, and the way the party finder works is if you meet the eligibility criteria, you're in. It's not some, accept decline thing. That's way better, way less toxic. Oh my god, so much better. And I'm in there with a bunch of players, and the level of helpfulness and bloody kindness that I experienced in this group, where there was a few more experienced players coaching us newbies through it. We were learning from our failures, and just having an experience that resembled playing like a WoW raid in a guild progression group, but having that happen naturally. Look, I know that can happen in WoW as well. It just feels like 14 is so much geared towards that, you know? Man. And hell, even just what Healer LB3 does, I'd say there's almost like a storytelling in what that makes a fight feel like. And sure, look, do you know what these things probably mean? Yeah, it means that the race the world first for FF14 is shorter than the WoW one. Yeah, it's a less punishing combat system. But solving an interesting challenge is one part of a game. The best games have that and have a whole bunch of fun. And WoW does have a whole bunch of fun in its raids. But right now, for me, I'm getting more fun from the FF ones. And I really like how I can fit raiding in this game into my schedule. I think it's a really, really cool system. I think it is absolutely no surprise that so many people are getting hooked on it now. And if you want to get hooked in something, the next thing you got to do is click that pop-out thingy, check out Matt's deep dive into the lore of Asphodelos. It is so cool. You'll learn a lot about what's really going on in there. Right as I finished P4, I went and I watched that video, and Matt did a great job. Enjoy that video from Matt. This is now where I leave you. Have a wonderful day, and goodbye.